Hey everyone, number 48 on my list of 100 greatest songs of all time is Penny Lane by the Beatles. They've finally arrived on the list. Everybody's wondering why isn't there a Beatles song yet. I'm very self-conscious about putting too many Beatles songs, but Penny Lane is a masterful piece of songwriting. It's kind of odd because they had a run from their second single, Please Please Me, right up to 67 of having number one singles with all their singles. And then they got to their greatest ever single, which was a double A side of, imagine this, Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever on a double A side. And it only got to number 2 behind Please Release Me by Engelbert Humperdinck, which is a crime to music. But Penny Lane, there's loads of stuff that we could talk about, and I will talk about most of it, and I'll miss bits out. But I've always been obsessed with Paul McCartney's bass line in it. I don't have my bass here, so I'm not going to try and replicate it. I wouldn't be able to, for a start. But it's this idea, by the time Paul McCartney got to like 66, 65, 66, he started to listen to James Jamerson quite a bit. Really famous Motown session musician, bass player obviously. And he started doing kind of what he would do. So a lot of those kind of poppy songs from Motown that Jamerson was on, McCartney was taking note, because there's a beautiful descending bass line, but it's so busy and he just keeps going. He keeps going to different, not rhythms obviously, but just he's all over the key, all over the fretboard, and like he does that anyway, McCartney. But in this song, it excels. You know, there's some interesting things that, you know, I'm not a music theorist, so I don't know these things, but I just thought they were really interesting. So there's, in the verses, the song begins in a B major, which is an optimistic chord, but shifts unexpectedly to B minor halfway through the verse, mirroring the dark and nostalgic childhood. So if it was B major, it's that, so it's quite bright. And then when it goes to B minor, it's and the banker never wears a Mac. So it goes from, so it's quite a shift in the middle of a verse. It's ominous, quite ominous sounding. And the banker never wears a Mac in the pouring rain. Very strange. The key and the chorus, the key modulates downwards from B major to A major during the chorus. The counterintuitive downward shift gives the chorus an open, floating feeling. It's a beautiful chorus. It's amazing. The harmonies on are class. And then in the final resolution, it's not really a key change. It sounds like it's a key change, but what it is McCartney utilizes a pivot chord to shift the final chorus back into the original B major, providing a strong sense of completeness and bringing the listeners full circle. So if you listen to that, it does sound like he's gone on to the dreaded key change, but he has not. He's not. He's just changed back to the B major and goes back into the Penny Lane. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. They are beneath the blue suburban skies. I love the backing vocals of Harrison and Lennon. Harrison seems to be dealing with it better than Lennon, but when they go to the falsetto, you can hear Lennon's voice kind of struggle to get there. But it gets there, but there's a struggle to it. And I always love those little things that you know, possibly, well, definitely now, but like they clean it up now for sure. And they could possibly clean it up then, but they didn't. They left it in. Lennon's just reaching for that. Suburban is the word, if you're listening to it, that he just gets to the falsetto one. And I love that little thing. There's a great story, and it turns into like one of the most important things in the song, really. So McCartney was sitting at home, and he was watching a Brandenburg concerto. The BBC television broadcast of the second Brandenburg Concerto by Johann Sebastian Bach. So he's sitting at home watching that, probably stoned out of his mind, having a great time. And he hears this strange instrument that he doesn't know what it is. It turns out it's being played by a trumpeter called David Mason. And it's a piccolo trumpet, which is a very small trumpet, for want of a better word. And it's built one octave higher than the standard instrument, like the trumpet. So, and it's very clean and clear and kind of, yeah, it's cool. It's a cool sound of things. So McCartney's never heard this, and he thinks he's been unsatisfied with the instrumental break on Penny Lane. You can hear it on some of the outtakes versions on various releases, but they're trying to fill something in, and I suppose the guitar solo is not really kind of match, and he hears this at the right time and he thinks, well, maybe I can get this guy to come in. So they get David Mason into the studio, and McCartney whistles or hums or maybe plays it on the piano to him what he wants. And David Mason is thinking, that's actually outside of the range of the trumpet. I'm not going to be able to play that. Like that's not what this piccolo trumpet is for. And supposedly the conversation goes back and forth, and McCartney's like, I think you will, like, you know. And Mason made a point of like the fact that all four of the Beatles were there for that moment, so they were all in on it to get, you know, they really were pushing together to, you know, even if it's just something like a trumpet solo where they can't add anything into it, they were all there as a collective. And he manages to get it, and so much so that it was questioned, because the Beatles did have a habit of speeding things up. The piano solo of In My Life is speeded up, and that's why it sounds kind of harpsichordy. But this is not sped up. He manages to pull it off. It's an incredible piece of musicianship by David Mason. I love that story. I think it's so cool. I think it's so cool that he just picks this guy. Obviously, there were Beatles and they had all this, you know, they could do that, but they picked this guy off the TV who played it and got him in to play it for them. And I love that. And there's lots of stuff going on in the song as well. There's flutes, piccolos, there's a flugelhorn, there's trumpets, there's oboes. The oboe in the left ear on the mono mix is so beautiful. The cor anglaise is in there, and you've got a double bass in there. I find it difficult to find the double bass in amongst it. I just hear McCartney's electric bass, but that could be just my copy of it. So yeah, and the story behind the Penny Lane, the actual why he wrote the song, the composition. Himself and, John Lennon a couple of years before had written In My Life, and it was about looking back, even though he was 25 years old, and he was looking back on life. And he decided then he was going to do Strawberry Fields Forever, which was an orphanage that was near his house when he was growing up, and he used to hang out in the gardens of the orphanage. And he found a kind of a dreamy place and stuff, or a place where he could dream. And then McCartney wanted to write about something similar, so he picked Penny Lane, which was it's obviously a street, but it was the depot between where, if McCartney was going to Lennon's house or Lennon was going to McCartney's house, that's where they had to switch buses. So they actually spent a lot of time there, and that was McCartney's idea. And there is a very picturesque quality to the song, and almost like isn't Little Old England like beautiful and stuff like that, and you know, I get that kind of idea, but I love that, like when the banker never wears a Mac in the pouring rain, the B minor. It's an odd, very, very odd thing to put into a song in the middle of a verse, to switch it like that. And if you go and listen to it now, really listen for that change in mood almost. But I love the observational stuff, and the banker never wears selling, like the Americans at one point thought the nurse was selling puppies from a tray rather than poppies. They misunderstood the pronunciation on it. And there's loads of lore to Penny Lane, and I could go on and on about it, but I won't. You know, it's another thing, Ringo's drumming. I talk about the genius of Ringo Starr. If you want to talk about a drummer, the drummer doesn't have to be flash all the time. It doesn't have to be doing mad solos and stuff to be in a song. There's, in the chorus, Ringo's going, no hi-hat. There's the odd thing on the ride cymbal when the drum drops out, the banker never wears a Mac, and he's just hitting the hi-hat, or sorry, the ride cymbal, and it's in the space as he leaves. And then when he comes in, beautiful, amazing drumming. Ringo wrote his parts for the song and not for himself, and that's probably his greatest strength, is that he was actually, if he doesn't have a list of compositions that he wrote for the Beatles, he wrote a lot of music for the Beatles, and that goes with his drum parts. So yeah, Penny Lane, what was it, number 48? Anyway, thanks a million, bye.